Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to dive into the very heart of the Mandarin Chinese language. We're moving past just memorizing sounds and words, and we're going to start mastering the art of building simple, meaningful sentences. You'll see that a sentence isn't just a string of words, it's a blend of grammar and culture. And when you get that blend right, that's when the language truly comes alive. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the absolute basics, the foundational sounds of Mandarin, the initials and finals in pinyin. From there, we'll use those sounds to build our very first greeting. Then we'll learn how to describe things using adjectives, and we'll see how a tiny little word called a particle can completely change a sentence's meaning. And finally, we'll wrap up with what I think is the most important part, the cultural context that gives all these words their true power. All right, let's get started with our foundation. Think of it like this. Every single syllable you hear in Mandarin is built from just two parts. It's like a set of linguistic Lego bricks. You have one piece and you have another piece, and you click them together to make a sound. These two pieces are called initials and finals. Getting a solid grasp on these is absolutely essential for clear, accurate pronunciation.
First up, we have the initial, or in Mandarin, the shengmu. This is pretty straightforward. It's the consonant sound that kicks off the syllable. It sets the starting point for the sound. So for example, if you hear the sounds bo, po, or mo, you're hearing the initials b, p, and ma right at the beginning.
And right after the initial comes the final, the yuanmu. This is really the core of the syllable. It's the vowel sound that carries the tone and lets the sound ring out. Finals can be really simple, like a or o, or they can be more complex, like I, or even a vowel followed by a consonant like an or ang. The initial starts the sound, but the final gives it its body and character. Now let's look at a few examples here. Some of these are easy, right? The M and F sounds are pretty much identical to their English counterparts. But, and this is a big but, the B and P sounds are a classic stumbling block for English speakers. The Mandarin B is what we call unaspirated. That means you make the B sound, but there's no puff of air that follows. It's like the B in the English word spy. Try it. Ba. Now the Mandarin P, on the other hand, is aspirated. It has a very distinct puff of air. You can actually feel it if you put your hand in front of your mouth. It's like the P in pie. Let's try that. Pa. This isn't just about having a good accent. This distinction can literally change the meaning of a word, so it's absolutely crucial to get it right.
Okay, so we've got our building blocks. Now let's put them together and actually create something meaningful. We're going to assemble these sounds into one of the most common fundamental greetings in the entire Mandarin-speaking world.
Now, Mandarin sentence structure can get tricky, but for a lot of basic sentences, it's actually pretty similar to English. Subject, verb, object. For this greeting, it's even simpler. We start with our subject, ni, which means you, then we follow it with a descriptive word, an adjective, hao, which means good or well. So the logic here is incredibly direct. You good. It's a statement, a wish for the other person's well-being.
And when we put those two characters together, we get our greeting, ni hao. It's the universal hello. Now, let's talk about the tones, because they're key. Both of these characters on their own are third tones. That's the tone that dips down and then rises back up. Let me demonstrate the pieces. Ni, hao, and together, ni hao.
But wait, here's where we hit a super important pronunciation rule. It's called third tone sandhi, and it's a game changer. You see, trying to say two of those dipping third tones back to back is actually pretty clumsy and slow. So to make it flow better, native speakers have a natural shortcut. When two third tones are together, the first one changes into a second, rising tone. So even though it's written as ni hao, it's always pronounced ni hao. Listen to that change. Ni hao. Mastering this one rule will instantly make you sound much more natural.
Great! We can say hello. Now let's take the next logical step. We're moving from a simple greeting to making a descriptive statement. This lets us start talking about ourselves, about our own state of being.
To do this, we need a couple of new words. First, the word for I or me, which is wa. Notice that's another third tone. Our second word is the adjective mang, which means busy, and that one has a second rising tone. Let me say it for you. Mang.
Now, here's the critical grammar point. A beginner's mistake is to just translate directly from English and say 我忙 for I busy. People will probably understand you, but it sounds incomplete. It's not quite right. In Mandarin, for these simple subject is adjective sentences, you almost always need to pop in the adverb hun. Now literally, hun means very, but in this context, think of it more as a piece of grammatical glue. It's the connector that links the subject I to the adjective busy, kind of like the verb to be does in English. And here you see the correct, natural-sounding sentence, 我很忙. Let me say it so you can hear the flow. 我很忙. And another important kip, because its job here is more grammatical than semantic, the word hun is usually unstressed, almost neutral in tone. It's just a little connector word. This is the standard, everyday way to say, I am busy in Mandarin.
So we can greet people and we can make a statement about ourselves. But a good conversation is a two-way street, right? We have to be able to ask questions. And luckily, Mandarin has a beautifully simple and efficient system for doing just that.
The way we form a simple yes or no question is by using something called a sentence final particle. A particle is just a little, unchanging word that has a grammatical job to do. For yes or no questions, the magic particle is ma. Its only job is to signal that the sentence it's attached to is a question. That's it.
And you can see just how elegant this system is right here. On the left, we have our statement from before, 你好, which we can think of as you are well. Now, to turn that into a question, are you well or how are you? All you do is add ma to the end. That's it. No flipping the word order around like we have to do in English. The sentence becomes 你好吗, simple and clean. One last very important pronunciation point here. If you look at the pinyin for ma, M-A, you'll see there's no tone mark above it. That's because it's pronounced with a neutral tone. It's very light, short, and unstressed. It just sort of tags on to the end of the sentence without having its own strong tone. Listen as I say it. 你好吗? See how light it is? Okay, we've just covered the mechanics, the grammar, the pronunciation, the nuts and bolts of building simple sentences. But if we stop there, we're missing the most important part. Because language is never just a set of rules. It is a living, breathing reflection of a culture, its history, and its values. Understanding this is what separates someone who can just speak the language from someone who can truly communicate. And for anyone planning to live or work in a Chinese-speaking country, this isn't just helpful, it's absolutely essential.
So in this last section, we're going to touch on some of these vital cultural nuances. We'll talk about how social hierarchy changes the way you greet people, the incredibly important concept of face, or 面子, knowing when to be formal versus informal, and other common greetings that go way beyond the ni hao you learn in Chapter 1 of a textbook.
First, let's talk about hierarchy and respect. In Chinese culture, showing deference to your elders, to your teachers, or to your superiors is incredibly important. If you're talking to a professor or your boss, using the standard ni can come across as way too casual, maybe even a little disrespectful. The proper pronoun to use in these situations is nin. And if you look closely at the character nin, you can see the character for heart, sin, at the bottom. It's a beautiful visual reminder that you're speaking with respect, from the heart. So the greeting becomes nin hao. Using this correctly shows that you're culturally aware and it makes a huge positive impression.
Now, let's move beyond ni hao. A very, very common greeting you'll hear among friends, neighbors, and colleagues is this question. 你吃了吗? 你吃了吗? Now, the literal translation is, have you eaten? And if you're not prepared for it, this question can be really confusing. You might think they're asking about your lunch plans or inviting you to dinner, but that's not what's happening at all.
The reason this greeting exists is rooted deep in Chinese history. For centuries, for the vast majority of people, getting enough to eat was a daily struggle. So asking someone if they had eaten was a very real, very sincere way of showing you cared about their basic well-being. Today, thankfully, food scarcity isn't the issue it once was, but the phrase has stuck around as a warm, common pleasantry. It's the cultural equivalent of how are you or how's it going. It's a way to show you care. And the right way to answer isn't to list what you had for lunch, but just a simple, churla, I've eaten. And then maybe ask back, Nina, and you? And the reason these cultural details matter so much becomes pretty clear when you look at this number. There are over 1.4 billion Mandarin speakers in the world. Being able to say 我很忙 is a great technical skill to have, but understanding when to say 您好or knowing what it really means when someone asks if you've eaten, that's the key. That's what unlocks real communication and builds real relationships with people in this enormous global community. So, throughout this lecture, we've gone from the smallest phonetic pieces of the language all the way to phrases that carry centuries of cultural weight. You now have the fundamental tools to start expressing yourself in Mandarin. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. Now that you can build a sentence, what world will you choose to describe?